Think about a color right now. Think about any color. Maybe it was this one. Or it wasn't, but that is going to be... No, that's pretty bright. This one is... This one is going to be the background color for today. I thought about, let's make a list about one deck per class that people used to play, but then stopped playing in this game for, I don't know what reason. Probably because the deck became bad, or something just is a lot better than the deck at the given point. Obviously, we don't talk about Demon Hunter, because that does not count as a class. My name is Person, and we start with Star Aligner Druid. This used to be the top meta deck in like late 2018. You had Aviana back at 9 mana, Kun at 10 mana, Geppetto I think was released already? That was your 8 mana card, and at 7 mana you had Starliner. No, you had Medivh at 8 mana, because it's a 7 health minion, and then you had Starliner at 7 mana. The idea was, when you played Juicy Sight Melon, you drew all those 4 cards. And because Druid has a really easy time gaining mana, and gains a lot more armor than Warrior, you just stalled the game for like, I don't know, 5 turns or so. And then you played Aviana into Kun, had a 1 7 health minion. Then you played Medivh to have your second 7 health minion, and then you'd like Bran and Starliner to deal 14 damage 2, 3, 4, 5 times. This deck was so annoying to play against because back then, Spreading Plague dealt with any aggressive deck out there. The other top tier deck back then was Odd Rogue, and when you play Odd Rogue against Spreading Plague, your opponent gets like 2 or 3 turns. So people started playing this guy in here, so you can actually deal with the 1-5 taunts. Make them 5-1s, play Fan of Knives or this guy, and then the entire board blows up and you have a chance of winning. Or you just lose. You might just lose. I haven't seen a single Starliner player in the past 2 years, and I think the last time somebody tried this, they realized that there's somewhat of a bug, where the animation doesn't really show up, or the game board goes darker than usual, or not dark at all. They messed up something in the coding. But yeah, that's a deck we don't see anymore. Same as Spell Hunter. Kobolds and Catacombs, in the Dungeon I Go Deeper, Corridor Creeper, well, we also had legendary weapons. Most of them never saw play, besides like Kingsbane, Skull of the Manari, and maybe Aluneth. But for Hunter, we had Rock de La, a legendary weapon for 7 mana. Filled your entire hand with random. You can guess why this deck doesn't see play anymore. In the same expansion, we also had 2 other cards. A Spellstone for just 5 mana that summoned 12 different stats, and you had To My Sight, has a pretty high chance of summoning Huffer. The last time I've seen a Spell Hunter, it was over 2 years ago, and despite the fact that we do have Zul'jin in the game that would recast all the spells, Spell Hunter is just not good. Hunter itself is not even in the current meta, it's not even represented. When I looked up the top decks for Legend, there was not a single Hunter deck, people just don't play the class. And this might also be the reason why nobody ever plays Spell Hunter, because it's rare enough to face one, and if so, they also just go face. But hey, I like the part back then when they played York and a backfight and you won the game. Good memories. Talking about spells, not just Hunter but also Mage used to be a spell-heavy deck. Now obviously, you know of Incanter's Flow and Flamewaker and just win by like turn 5 or 6, but you used to play big Spell Mage. This is one of the people's favorite decks of all time. You had Frost's Lich Jaina, a Death Knight that gives all your elementals lifesteal so you don't die. You had Mountain Giant and Twilight Drake. You played Chatka in here, and then you summoned giant minions. Because you didn't do too well against aggressive decks, you had board clears, you had Dragon's Fury, Meteor maybe, something else, I think Blizzard and Flamestrike. It was just a deck that was late game focused, which is something we don't see anymore. You either have a combo deck right now where you just win when you draw the cards that you need, or you play hyper aggressive. Big Spell Mage just doesn't exist anymore. But it was a lot of fun to play like 2-3 years ago. And then we go way back to the Grand Tournament, almost 6 years ago. We got a man who is Nonya. Who is Nonya? None of your business. Mysterious Challenger himself made Secret Paladin a thing. And while you can technically still play him, you also don't see Secret Paladin. You might see secrets in Paladin, because there are like 2 or 3 that are good. You have Oh My York, you have Never Surrender, and maybe Reckoning. But that doesn't really qualify a deck to be a Secret Paladin. It's more like you see that in Odd and maybe Hand Buff, or like the one where you play Call to Arms in. But a secret focused deck itself just doesn't really exist anymore. Even though in the last expansion we had this one legendary called Cannonier's Smithy. He transforms all your secrets into 3/3 guys that then, when they die, become secrets again. Cool idea, doesn't do anything, and I've not seen a single person playing this card yet. Has been a month and a half since the expansion got released. But let's be honest here, you probably don't miss Secret Paladin that much. You really just curved out perfectly, Zombie Chow on 1, Sheeted Minibot on 2, Master for Battle on 3, Shredder on 4, Belcher on 5, Challenger on 6, Dr. Boom on 7, Tyrion on 8. It wasn't even that hard to get a curve like that, and you just completely destroyed all your opponents. And now you just win by turn 5, so it changed to the better. Next we get a combo deck for Priest. It's APM Priest. I've not seen anybody playing this for the past like 3 years, and I think it also doesn't work anymore because when you use Holy Smite now, you can only target enemy minions instead of any minion. But here's how this deck worked. You had Test Subject in here, Divine Spirit, Inner Fire. You also had a charge minion, the boar, and with enough radiant elementals and spells that copy your minions, you kind of just swap back and forth and back and forth. I have a clip right here probably. And you did this combo over and over. How many spells on your test subject? If you summon a copy of test subject, how many spells do you get back to your hand? How many spells do you burn? At what point do you copy the second test subject, and so on and so forth. This was like the big brain deck. If you like chess and you like to play anything where you actually have to think, this was the deck for you. There was even this one simulator made where you could play against Void Lords with this combo, so you had to go through X amount of top minions using this specific deck. This was probably the peak of Priest gameplay, and since then people just play Big Priest and win. There was also a different version of this deck, which just used Valence Chosen, so you get X amount of spell damage, and then you used Holy Smite, which used to be able to go face, and then you just deal like 28 damage or so twice. Great decks, nobody plays them anymore, probably because Holy Smite got changed. And there are just a lot of better alternatives. Next I picked a deck from 2017 that was in the meta for like 2 months, so you might not even remember this. But this was called Water Rogue. As Bruce Lee once said, when water enters a glass, it becomes the glass. Be shapeless, be formless like water, like Rogue. So the idea was you play Murglemans, you play Murlocs, and you play Pirates. 2 characters that live in the water, or on the water. That's why it was called Water Rogue. This deck was so much fun to play, probably just because I really like Shaku in here. Nobody ever plays Shaku anymore, and nobody plays Finja, but this was such a cool deck to play, one of my all-time favorites. You curved out really well, because of Finja you summoned all your Murlocs, and because of Swashbucklers and Shaku you had a bunch of random cards added to your hand. This for me, after Un'Goro got released, was like peak Hearthstone. Even this one guy, I think something Sensei, I forgot the card's name. This was a card you used to play. You had like Stealth, which is a mechanic that rogues should use more often. And you have Pirates, which makes sense for rogues, and you have like Murlocs. I don't know, I really like this. I really like this style of deck. And we haven't seen it in 4 years. Another thing that happened shortly after Un'Goro got released was Elemental Shaman. This was such a great synergistic deck. Every single time you play an Elemental, the next one you play has synergy. I know in Standard at the moment you can play Elemental Shaman, but I mean the old version of it, where you played like Servant of Kalimos, you played Kalimos, you played Blazecaller. All those cards tied together in one great deck. I still remember this one clip from Amas where he opened a bunch of packs and he got a golden Kalimos. He got the Avatar, the master of all the elements. Might just be me with my nostalgia glasses on, but Un'Goro was such a fun expansion. I do like the fact that we got elemental support recently, it's just that nobody plays that. In Wild. In Standard they do, but not in Wild. And then after Shaman, we go to my favorite class, Warlock. There are so many decks I could have selected, and didn't. So I went with Treachery Warlock. This might just be a deck that I like to play. Instead of like a real archetype people used to play as a meta deck, there was one player called Yearling Summer on America and EU who always played Treachery Warlock to High Legend. This was like his deck. He knew how to play that perfectly. The idea was simple. You had 2 ways of using Treachery effectively. You either play the card on Doomsayer, give your opponent the D and their board blows up, which was just fun to do against aggressive decks. You give them something they don't want to have, and then they might concede. Or the actual combo. You either play Fel Reaver in here, or you play Hull Fiend. When you play Hull Fiend, you can't play Voidcaller and Void Lord, as the Voidcaller might pull the Hull Fiend and then you discard your hand, but you would give your opponent Hull Fiend, they use a card like Dark Skies, Defile, any card that deals like 1 damage over and over, and your opponent discards card after card from their hand. If you've seen one of the recent episodes of Hearthstone Chronicles, the series I have against Zeddy, then you might have seen that maybe it's not the best deck to play. That's the only spoiler I can give. But this was so much fun. You could have also played Fel Reaver instead of the Hull Fiend, and then you go for an Emperor tick. Your hand costs like 0 mana because you play a bunch of 1-cost minions. Give your opponent Fel Reaver, play card after card after card, and their deck blows up. Basically Ticketus with a bunch of extra steps. So much fun to play. So much not fun to lose against in case somebody does that against you. But really good memories blowing up enemies' decks. And lastly for Warrior, you know what I go with, Patrons. When I started playing the game, this was the #1 deck before any of the nerfs happened. Blackrock Mountain got released, everybody started playing this, and it was so frustrating to lose against. It wasn't necessarily because of the patrons, but because of Frothing Berserker, which out of nowhere has charge. You played Warsong Commander, played the patrons, played Frothing Berserker, and then Whirlwind Effect after Whirlwind Effect into Inner Rage, and out of nowhere 28 attack added to your Frothing Berserker, hits face, lose the game. The fun part comes into play when it's like a 50-50 chance for yourself to either mess up this combo or do it correctly. When you are a new player, which I was back in the day, this was really hard to play. I didn't really know how to pull this off correctly. So I tried it and either failed or succeeded, which made it like a coin flip every single game for me. And now you just play Flamewaker Mage and win by turn 5. Which, by the way, that's a hint, you could play Patron Warrior against Flamewaker Mage right now. And then you summon a minion whenever they shoot a missile. Or you don't. Probably not. And with that being said, those were all the decks, one per class, that I personally think about when it comes to like nostalgia and my favorite deck per class that people don't play anymore. Let me know which deck or archetype you miss in the comments down below. There's probably something really obvious that I completely forgot about. Maybe like Mechathun Shaman, which Dog used to play in like top 10 Legend, where you played like Voodoo Doll on your Mechathun, or something like that. Let me know. Have a great rest of your day and take care.